Here we have statues there's a Thai style structure with a prayer wheel with Om Mani Padme Hum. This is supposed to be Shakyamuni Buddha before he attained enlightenment. So Siddhartha Gautama as the prince. When he's getting ready to renounce the world, here is his charioteer Chana. An interesting compare and contrast would be to compare and contrast the chariot ride of Siddhartha Gautama with Chana with the chariot ride of Arjuna and Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita. Very interesting insights might derive from that. So this is called renouncing the world. And here you see, so there was a point when Siddhartha is trying to, he hasn't been allowed to see suffering in the world. So he asks Chana to take him out to see the world. And while he's out there, he's stimulated and inspired to seek enlightenment for himself by seeing 4 sights. So he sees a diseased, sick man, an old man with intense old age, and then a dead man, and then he sees a renunciate. And then he learns that renouncing is possible. So this is going to lead him on a journey. And so he has just had a child. He's 29 years old. And one night he decides to leave, and he goes teary-eyed and looks into the room with his wife, Yasodhara, and his young boy, Rahula, who's just been born not long before. And he decides to leave home to attain enlightenment and then return to help others attain enlightenment and come out of suffering once he has attained enlightenment for himself. So he leaves home at that point. And this is when he becomes a monk. He cuts his own hair, which he'd had a barber to do that previously. And so this, as we walk around the Great Lotus Monastery, the Kagyu Monastery in Lumbini, there are different scenes from his life here, 2 intersecting Vajras on top of a lotus. So the indestructible mind of enlightenment comes out of the muck, and beauty is attained and experienced directly. This goes back after Siddhartha has cut his hair. He goes and he studies with the 2 greatest meditation masters of his time, and he learns all of the 8 jhanas, including the 4 form jhanas and then the 4 formless jhanas, the absorption meditations through breath meditation and one-pointed concentration. And then he decides to go and begin intense asceticism. There was a big ascetic movement in India and across South Asia at that time with, different traditions, the proto-Buddhist tradition, the proto-Jain tradition, the proto-Ajivika, and then, this is when the Upanishads are being written, and, many men, and then later women are going into the forest to attain enlightenment. And so at one point he starves himself to death. Basically, he's eating either one grain of rice per day or 1 hemp seed per day, according to different traditions. And his skin turns black. He loses all of his hair. He reports that you could see his spinal cord through his stomach. There's a very famous Gandhara statue that you can look up online to see an artist's rendition of it from within the Greek tradition. So this is called practicing austerities for 6 years. And so he eventually was meditating in very hot caves. He was meditating, in the hot sun. He was meditating in the cold. So extremes. It was a life of extremism. And then he realizes the problem with this, the mistake he's made along the way. This is called subduing the Maras. So when he attains enlightenment, Satan, Mara, comes to him and tempts him first with the carrot and the stick. So he brings his most beautiful daughters to seduce Siddhartha Gautama to prevent him from attaining enlightenment. Basically, in all the prophetic tradition around the world, you see Satan. He comes and he tempts somebody when they're getting very close to enlightenment, and he often offers them leadership of the world, to be a world ruler. And he'll try to seduce them with women, with sensuality, and then he'll threaten them with war. So he sends his sons to attack Siddhartha Gautama, but Siddhartha is totally dedicated to attaining enlightenment at this point, and so he's able to resist the devil, and the devil flees from him. And then he sees all of his lives go past him in succession, and he learns all the lessons from previous lives. We can view this many different ways. Some people view it as, that, like, because view it as the consciousness or awareness or some energetic aspect of ourselves goes from one body to the next in transmigration, reincarnation, etc. But others see it as that we are all one, and so he's actually seeing all the lifetimes of humanity, which is it's a very interesting thing that we'll discuss more in the future. So subduing the devils within. So it's a very psychological tradition. These birds I've noticed on many different shrines around Kathmandu Valley, of the birds, and they're holding a Bodhi leaf in many cases. So we're headed over here. It's a very nice little monastic complex. Beautiful. Now we've got attaining enlightenment, attaining perfect enlightenment. So there's a scene where Siddhartha Gautama becomes the Buddha, but then he has not attained perfect enlightenment yet. And the creator, Brahma, comes to him and asks him to teach, but he doesn't feel like anyone is ready, that people will not want enlightenment, they won't be ready for it. And so so Brahma convinces him that there are people with just a little dust in their eyes, and then the Buddha realizes the truth of this, and then when the compassion arises for humanity and for all sentient beings, and he expands his heart in this instance, this is when he attains complete enlightenment. So complete enlightenment is not just about wisdom, but also about compassion. It's not just a selfish path, but a selfless path, a path of expansion and of inclusion. So it's very interesting. So then he becomes the Buddha, the awakened one. And so we're going around the Kagyu shrine again, a little bit more. Another Vajra. It's a lightning bolt, a thunderbolt, originally depicted within the stories of Indra, and then later was incorporated into the Tibetan Vajrayana tradition. Now it's interesting that Tibetan Buddhism is a tantric tradition and has a lot of connecting points and symbols that you would find within other tantric traditions of, say, the Jain tantric traditions and the Hindu tantric traditions, especially the Shaivite, where you will see enlightened masters holding a trident and similar symbols. But I've never seen the Vajra being used in like Hindu tantric tradition. Perhaps you know more about this. So this is turning the wheel of Dharma. This is when he goes, during the years when he was practicing intense asceticism, Siddhartha Gautama had 5 companions. And sadhus, basically. They were all sadhus wandering out in the forests. And then when he decided to take a middle path, they left him. They abandoned him because they thought that he had become apostate, that he had left the truth seeking. So once he attained enlightenment, he used his clairvoyance to look for his 2 teachers that had taught him meditation, to go and teach them how to become enlightened very quickly. He saw with his mind's eye that they had already passed away. And then he thought of his 5 friends, and he saw that they were in Sarnath in Uttar Pradesh. So he walked quite a distance from Bodh Gaya to Sarnath, where he then teaches them, and they all become arhants. They all become enlightened in very short order. So this is turning the wheel of Dharma. All right, and we're just going through his life. A lot of the temples tell these kind of stories, the stories of the Buddha's life, to inspire people to seek truth and to be transformed. Just wandering through, you can see the gate, the Torana, to enter into the monastic compound. This is called displaying miracles. And so we've got many interesting instances of the Buddha interacting with animals. There was an instance by by Vishali, where a monkey brings a honeycomb to him and offers it to him, and then the Buddha offers him teachings, Dhamma teachings. And then there's an instance where a drunken, intoxicated elephant that was mad, like crazy, basically attacked him, and he was able to stand his ground, put up a hand, and then project loving kindness to the elephant. The elephant came and prostrated before him. So it's a very powerful scene. And then he gave teachings. So I'm not sure what the result of those teachings were, but they're interesting stories. And then we get to at Kushinagar, he passes away into Mahaparinirvana. So this is where he dies, where he sheds the body. So he's laying on his right side. So Buddhists and Muslims tend to sleep on their right side, and then he's got some of his disciples around him, and he was giving teachings to the people, including lay people, right up until his last breath. So you can see the stupa. And then actually here was the first scene. This is the scene where his mom is bathing before having him, and then you see when he was born out of her right side, and immediately walks 7 steps and talks and tells that he puts his finger in the air and announces that this will be his final lifetime and that he will attain total enlightenment. So this is a really interesting place, and it tells the story of the Buddha. And you see many people from many different groups coming and visiting the shrines and the temples from around Nepal. So go ahead and bring this to a close. Be healthy and be happy.